Let's build the best wildcard team for this week and the best free hit team for this week. The difference is that a wildcard you're looking a little further ahead, up to 5 game weeks in this instance, and for the free hit we're only looking at this week, who's going to score us the most points. These are the teams generated by the My Team feature over on Hub. If you want to have a play, click the link in the description. In our best wildcard team we have Ederson. Ederson comes in, Crystal Palace, Nottingham in the next 2, then Villa, Spurs and Wolves. This is going to look ahead up to 5 game weeks and Ederson gets the nod in goal. I'm not going to say it's surprising. Outside the likes of Cancelo, maybe Diaz, Haaland and kind of De Bruyne, no one's really nailed, so it does make sense that you'd want their most and only really nailed asset in Ederson. Champions League football coming, you want the most nailed Man City assets possible. Our backup goalkeeper is none other than Ward at Leicester, disappointing with I think 3 points in 3 games so far, but ultimately he is a starting 4 million goalkeeper. Into defence, and while he might have disappointed us recently, Trent Alexander-Arnold is absolutely nailed here. Trent tops the defenders in the league for XA over the first 3 games. Expected assist 1.12, but he's actually achieved 0. So he has underperformed his XA, and with his proven pedigree, you would assume that an assist is around the corner for Trent. On top of that, some nice fixtures. Liverpool just need to switch on at the back. They're struggling with injuries, but ultimately they still do have that backbone of Alisson, Van Dijk, Robertson and Trent. All they really need is that right centre back position filled. If they can sort their defensive frailties out, Trent could be on for big points, and a lot of people are transferring him out this week. At time of recording, 350,000 managers have already given up on Trent, and I think you are absolutely mad. Bournemouth at home, and you're getting rid of Trent, the best defender in the league, arguably the best points per million player. Based on a few game weeks, I think you're mad. Trent is in this team. Cancelo won't surprise you either. The same fixtures as Ederson. Looking really good. You know, he had a 7-pointer and an 11-pointer before the 0 in game week 3. Anyone giving up on him or losing faith, it was 1 game week against Newcastle. A couple of nice fixtures around the corner. It makes absolute sense that Cancelo is here, and he's one of the most nailed players in that City team, which is very hard to come by. Reece James also makes the cut. 6.1 million now, has Leicester, Southampton, West Ham, Fulham, and then a tough game against Liverpool in game week 8. He has an XA of 0.65 so far and an XG of 0.64. So these stats are showing that he is getting the opportunities. He's made 5 key passes and had 5 shots on goal as well in 3 weeks, so I think that's pretty decent from a defender. The one worry with James is obviously that he seems to have tucked into right centre back, with Ruben Loftus-Cheek playing right wing back last week. So that's one we'll have to monitor, but if he was in my team, which he is, I will be holding on to him. And if I was wildcarding, I would still be looking at him as well. Although for this week, I would probably be trying to squeak in Perisic. My team's algorithm hasn't got Perisic in the defence here, and I think a lot of that's down to the low sample size, the low expected minutes, potentially with rotation coming. So maybe the algorithm just wants to learn a bit more about Perisic before it recommends him. It could just be a 1 week wonder in the robot's eyes. But we have a couple of cheap defenders here now. We have Patterson at Everton up against Brentford and Leeds, then Liverpool and Arsenal are 2 tough games, and West Ham, who have not been great so far. And our second enabler is controversially Valerie at Southampton. You know, United and Chelsea in the next 2, Wolves, Brentford and Villa. That surprised me, to be honest with you. I thought it would have been Nico Williams, but Nico Williams, it's 4.1, so that 0.1, considering it's going to be the 3rd bench player, you know, the algorithm just wanted to save 0.1 million, and I respect that. Into midfield, and it's this week's captain, Mo Salah. 9.3 predicted points against Bournemouth is as big as I've seen a predicted point total be. Newcastle, Everton, Wolves, and then Chelsea in the next 5. Salah's as good a captaincy option as any, and he showed it against Manchester United, where he got the scrappy headed goal because he was quickest to react, even though Liverpool were up against it. Even when they aren't performing well, he can score. You could say they've been poor this season, but he still has 22 points in 3 weeks, which is over 7 points per game. So it does not surprise me that Mo Salah makes the cut. Phil Foden does surprise me a little more. Do you know, he hasn't been involved as much as we would have liked for the amount of game time he's had this season. I believe he also got minutes in the midweek friendly against Barcelona. That was for charity, if you're wondering. And it really does surprise me he's here, because he's not even in the top 10 of midfielders when it comes to XGs, XAs, big chances, expected goal involvements. He's right down the pecking order so far this season. But Man City have some top fixtures and he is getting game time. And you'll remember him from seasons gone by. There's no question about his quality as a player. It's a question of his quality as an FPL player, and we just need him to get some more points on the board. But the algorithm has picked him, and I think a lot of it's down to that 7.1 predicted points against Nottingham next week. Next up, we have Bukayo Saka over at Arsenal, who again has disappointed. Arsenal have been incredible. He hasn't done as much as his teammates, but still, he is a quality player. We all know it, and he can be a really good FPL asset. Fulham Fulham, Villa and Everton in 3 of the next 4. He could definitely score well. He has dropped in price to 7.9 million, so no longer quite that 8 million required, and it will not surprise you to see his little teammate Martinelli goes in next to him. Martinelli's risen by 0.4 million already. He's up to 6.4 million, and he's predicted to do just slightly worse than Saka. 0.3 less than him against Fulham predicted, and then 0.2 less against the other teams. But for me, I do predict Martinelli to outscore Saka based on what we've seen. But obviously my team's maybe taking last season more into account here and having a look at many more factors than I am. Maybe the expected minutes with Smith Rowe, which I don't think is in danger anymore really because of how good Martinelli's been, but I think that was always a consideration coming into the season, and when Smith Rowe's back, will Martinelli get rotated? So I suppose it's a wait and see. But both of them will be playing in our starting 11, which won't surprise you. We're going for a 3-5-2, and the fifth of our 5 in midfield might surprise you. It's a Liverpool player. Harvey Elliott at 5 million is a great way into the Liverpool starting 11. 0.33 XG, 0.75 XA. He's had 6 shots in the box, only one of them was on target, which is mad. You know, imagine a couple of those were a little more clinical. At 5 million as a way into the Liverpool midfield, he's actually got a couple of bonus points already because he's been playing pretty well. The problem is, obviously, you've probably got the slot blocked with Trent, Robbo, Diaz or Salah. You probably have a combination of 3 of them. So fitting Elliott in could be tough, but at 5 million, I'd expect him to get a return against Bournemouth based on those numbers and based off that game time. He might even haul. And if he did haul, everyone would be like, oh my god, who saw that coming? Big Johnny's seen it coming. You can post next week when it's happened. Into the forwards, Greenwood slots in. He's got 24 minutes in total. He came on for 17 minutes in the first week, 7 minutes in game week 3. Look, he's just going to be probably second on our bench, to be fair, with Valerie there. Ultimately not expected to do very much, apart from getting a point most weeks if called upon. And obviously at 4.5 million, it allows that money to be distributed elsewhere in the team. 17 million left tells me, and it tells you, we're not going for one of the premium lads, Kane and Haaland and Gabriel Jesus. Something different is happening here. That guy Welbs, Danny Welbeck, comes in 6.5 million at Brighton, and that one surprises people with the algorithm. It loves Danny Welbeck. It absolutely loves him. Great end of last season. He's done well this season with 2 assists and 2 bonus points to his name already, and he's got a run of great fixtures. Leeds, Fulham, Leicester, Bournemouth, Palace. It doesn't get much better than that. So Danny Welbeck locked in. Leaves us with Harry Kane. Harry Kane comes in over Haaland, and Kane is just that little bit more nailed, that little bit cheaper. He's up against Nottingham this week, who have the highest expected goals conceded, the most shots conceded, and the most shots in the box conceded in the whole league. Harry Kane could have an absolute field day. It is worth noting that this team is 0.9 over budget, so maybe you can't afford it if you haven't had a good start to the season, but many teams have already gained 1 million in value, my team included. I've 0.4 in the bank and my team is worth 100.6. So this would be affordable to a lot of wildcarders. If not, maybe you'll just need to shave off a Harvey Elliott down to a 4.5 mid. And there you can see it now, a 100% team rating, 78 predicted points this week, and that's a 99% game week rating. There is a 100% team for this game week, which we're going to have a look at. But ultimately, this whole team has home games, apart from Harry Kane, who's up against Nottingham, who, as I mentioned, could concede a load for the reasons I said. Home games for top teams against mid to lower table teams. This team looks incredible. And you know, to be honest, I have a lot of these players. There are a few changes I personally would maybe make. You know, I don't know. It's historical biases. I'd find it hard to pick Welbeck on a wild card, even though the data's there. Foden I'd find hard with a rotation. Saka I would find hard, you know, with Odegaard doing so well, and even Jesus up top. I'd maybe go Jesus instead of Welbeck, and then instead of Saka and Foden, I'd maybe be looking at the likes of a Rodrigo or a Pascal Gross. But ultimately, there's a million ways to bang the same drum, and I think this team will definitely do well this week. 78.1 predicted points, which is obscene. Let's move on to the free hit team and see if we can get that 100%. This episode is brought to you by Spitch. Spitch is a daily fantasy site where basically they run single game week modes or season long modes of fantasy. They have a much more intricate scoring matrix where players get scored for lots of different actions on a pitch other than just goals and assists. Tackles and shots, etc. will get scored as well. You can pick players from other leagues like the Bundesliga, even the Champions League, and they have a free to play season long mode with 2.5 grand up for grabs. If you want to pay a $5 in, there's a 50k prize pool for that tournament. There's a great community building of fantasy football hub managers over there. If you scan the QR code on the screen now or click the link in the description, you can go over and check out Spitch. We'll have to fly through a lot of this because ultimately a lot of it's the same. Ederson comes in, Crystal Palace at home, great fixture for Man City. They did concede 3 to Newcastle, Newcastle, but Newcastle look insane. Palace though, Zaha's firing, a couple of those guys are doing really well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Ederson concede this week, to be honest. Backup goalkeeper Danny Ward needs no more explanation. We're sick of hearing about him. He's away to Chelsea, really tough game week. If you have Ward and Iverson, I'd probably be going Iverson to Sanchez if you can find 0.5 million and benching Ward. Chelsea away is not easy. Then United, Brighton, Villa and Spurs are there's a couple of tough games in there, and I fancy them to concede in most of them. In defence, won't surprise you, Trent at home to Bournemouth. You'd imagine we'll have 3 Liverpool players in this team. Predicted to get 7.4 points, can get it from anywhere. Highest expected assists in the league. Will he realise that at Bournemouth? I really hope he does. It's about time, and we're repaid for showing such faith, as are all of you, I'm sure. And he's joined in defence by Reece James. We're playing 3 at the back, compared to a lot of big at the back teams, this is a little more heavy up top. I've obviously got 5 at the back as well, so I'm going big at the back. This is going for a 3-4-3, this free hit team. But James, yeah, I could talk about him all day. I've talked about him before, so we won't go into him any further. Walker comes in instead of Cancelo at 5.1 million. 4.8 predicted points against Crystal Palace. You'd like to think there's a high chance of that clean sheet, along with Ederson. As I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they concede. The issue with Walker is he doesn't have that upside like Cancelo in terms of scoring goals, in terms of getting assists. He might get 1 a season, but I mean, there's nowhere near the same upside, but he is nice and consistent for 5.1 million. Our backup defenders are slightly different than the wildcard team. We still have Patterson, who is Brentford away, 2.6 predicted points, but we've found room for Nico Williams at 4.1 here. He's at home to Spurs. I wouldn't expect him to do anything, to be honest. 2.4 predicted points, and he will be last on the bench. Patterson will be second on the bench, but it is interesting that for a free hit team, AI has decided to go with Nico Williams and not save the 0.1 for elsewhere. But again, it's a 1 week team, so maybe we don't need to spend the entirety of their budget. In midfield, and our captain this week, Mo Salah with those 9.3 predicted points is obviously absolutely huge. And his mate on the other side of the pitch, the new Mane, Luis Diaz, is also in this team. Coming in at 8 million, predicted to score 6.8 points. Not quite as well as Salah, but still a very respectable return should he achieve it. That's one double up in our midfield, and we do have a second double up to have a look at. That is Bukayo Saka at Arsenal, who we've already spoke about, and Gabriel Martinelli, the biggest price riser so far with 0.4 of a price rise. That'll make up our 4-man midfield. They've got home games to Bournemouth and Fulham, 2 promoted teams. Fulham have looked pretty impressive attacking. They've upset a couple of teams, they've done their bit, but I do think they'll concede goals, and Arsenal are just looking absolutely different gravy this year so far. They look so explosive, so fast, so young, so exciting, so much talent, so much pace, so much aggression. So I do think that could be a high scoring game. That's one of the games this weekend that I'm really looking forward to watching. And as our backup midfielder, we have Lavia at Southampton, who should be pretty nailed for a 2-pointer. Predicted to score 3.1 against United. I would back him to score 2, to be honest. First bench slot anyway, we'll take it. Up top, Harry Kane comes in, those 7.4 predicted points against Nottingham for all the reasons I've already mentioned. Welbeck up against Leeds, and while that looks like a great fixture, Leeds obviously beat Chelsea 3-0. Now Chelsea aren't maybe as strong as we would expect. Maybe it wasn't quite as big an achievement as it looks on paper, but still, Leeds are a quality side, so I don't know how Welbeck will fare there. If Chelsea can't score, can Brighton? I think maybe they can, but I don't think there's going to be a load of goals here. Might be 1 return for Welbeck, if any, so if he gets more than that, I'll be very impressed, but 5.7 predicted points sounds about right to me. And then lastly, Anthony Martial comes in, one of the Anthonys at Manchester United. They might have another Anthony joining them very soon. 5.8 predicted points against Southampton. This is a minutes game. If he gets the minutes, if Ronaldo isn't played, Martial could get some minutes. He got 45 minutes against Liverpool, which was his first appearance of the season. So if he can get a start, or even come on for another 45 minutes against Southampton, if United play how they did against Liverpool, he could do well. Not maybe nailed enough points for me there, to be honest, but I rate that the algorithms picked him. It's different. And there we go, 100% game week rating, 79.1 predicted points, which isn't a lot more than the best wildcard team. So if I was free hitting, which one would I pick? You probably have to pick the free hit team because ultimately you'll reset next week. But it shows again that there are many ways to play this. There are different combinations you can pick that can be very successful. And ultimately, last week, the predicted teams didn't do very well because it was an unpredictable week. If 1 or 2 of these surefire home fixtures against promoted teams don't maybe go to plan for the teams that have been playing well so far. So while these are really, really good fun for guiding decisions, particularly if you're a new player or you're not too sure what you're at, there are other eligible players or very decent options out there. We haven't seen anything of the likes of Perisic, Rodrigo, Zaha or Tony, who are the most transferred in players this game week. But I'll tell you something, if I could get 79 points out of this team, I'd bite your hand off, because 79 79 points would be a cracking haul, almost double what I scored last week. Thanks for watching, guys. Check out my team in the link in the description. You can head over and have a play around for free. Let us know what your team is predicted to score in the comments below.